Yo, yo, I'm Yovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. I just got back from Gainbridge Fieldhouse here in Indianapolis, where the Lakers lost 109-90 to the Indiana Pacers. LA is now 41-33 and 2-1 on their 6-game East Coast road trip. 90 points marked a season low for LA. They shot 40.7% overall, 16.7% on threes. They made just 5 of 30, were 15 of 18 at the free throw line, 83.3%. And yeah, just not a great game, particularly on the offensive end. I mean, they held Indiana to just 109 points. The last time these two teams faced off, they scored a combined 295 points. Indiana scored 145. LA obviously had 150. So a 60-point swing for the Lakers offensively in less than a week against the Pacers. Quickly, we'll touch on some stat lines and then we'll get into it. So AD returned after missing last game with his left knee hyperflexion. And he said post-game that his knee was a little sore in this game, but it's nothing he can't play through. He still doesn't remember what play or exactly when the injury occurred in the Milwaukee game, but he said it's something that's manageable. And he started to feel a little better during the game. He started to warm up a bit, and it's not something that's expected to be serious or cause him to miss any additional time. AD had 24 and 15, which it's kind of like an average game for AD, but against the Pacers, he entered this averaging 38.5 points and 18 rebounds. So a steep decline in terms of AD's production against Indiana. Didn't have a block, didn't have a steal, was not as effective on the defensive end. Darvin Ham said post-game he felt AD was moving gingerly, and I would agree with that to an extent. I mean, it's still 24 and 15. It's kind of like an off night for AD. LeBron had 16 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists, nearly had a triple-double. Only took 12 shots in 35 minutes, was 4 for 4 at the free throw line, but felt like an oddly passive LeBron game. Did have 5 turnovers, and the Lakers overall had 16 turnovers, including, I want to say, they had 6 in the first quarter, which really set them behind. And then from that point on, they just continued to turn the ball over at inopportune times, particularly in the fourth quarter when Austin and LeBron each had a turnover while the Lakers were making their run, trying to get back into the game. They're down about 7. They had a miscommunication on an alley-oop pass where Austin ended up throwing it at LeBron's knees. Then that went out of bounds. And then Austin actually had an open 3. Probably should have just taken it, but tried force feeding a pass to LeBron on the wing. Tyrese Haliburton intercepted it, and the Pacers scored in transition. Austin had a interesting game, 16 points, 13 rebounds, continuing to rebound the ball at a really high level, 6 assists. So he also almost had a triple-double. Did have some costly turnovers and just had an uncharacteristic fourth quarter in this one. But overall, Austin was competing defensively. He was competing on the glass, and it's hard to, like, some of those mistakes were uncharacteristic, but it was kind of one of those nights. And then Rui had 14 points and 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks in his 31 minutes. To go from having 24 rebounds in the past 2 games, his first 2 double-digit rebounding games of the season, including a career-high 14 rebounds against the Bucks, to then have 0 tonight. A bit of a stinker from Rui from that perspective. Like, still at 14 points and had several impressive dunks in this game. Was attacking the rim and cutting, and I thought his timing offensively was pretty good in some regards, but just not the level of effort and engagement and physicality that the Lakers needed, particularly on the defensive end from Rui. And then D'Lo also had a stinker, 6 points, 3 of 14 shooting, did have 5 assists. Also had no turnovers, so good assist-to-turnover ratio there, but just never really got it going and had a bit of a passive game from him. And then the Lakers got absolutely nothing from their bench. The Taurean Prince had 5 points. Spencer Dinwiddie had 5 points. Cam Reddish was 0 for 2. He's now 1 for 13 in his last 6 games offensively, and is just a glaring minus on that end, who has become a big liability for LA. So with that all laid out, let's get into our 3 takeaways from tonight's game. Quickly, I just want to say, if you are watching this on YouTube and enjoying it, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and hitting that notification button. And if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or another podcast platform, please consider following, downloading, and leaving a 5-star review. All right, so takeaway number one, I kind of spoiled it in my intro, but this was just one of those nights. The Lakers just did not have it. They didn't have the energy. One thing that was a talking point post-game was 3 games in 4 nights. This was the 3rd game of the road trip. They'd already played a back-to-back to kick off the road trip, and going into Indiana against a juiced-up Indiana team that was hungry to beat the Lakers after losing to them twice earlier this season and once just within the past week. In a heartbreaker for them. I don't want to say this was a schedule loss because I think that applies more to back-to-backs, more drastic circumstances. But this was a tough situation for LA to already be coming off a back-to-back, 3rd game of the trip, and you go to a team that leads the league in pace, leads the league in fast break points, and loves to play in transition and with tempo. And I think you saw like some of the ways that Indiana is able to exploit LA in this matchup with just their speed and their relentlessness and continually pushing after makes, after misses, after turnovers. Like, they just don't stop. And LA, when they're at their worst, can be lethargic with their transition defense and their rebounding, their box outs. They can be a bit passive offensively and just kind of be swinging the ball side to side and not really generating the downhill attacks that this team thrives on. So I think that was a big part of it tonight. I mean, you shoot 5 for 30 on threes, and as we know, the Lakers are selective with their 3-point shooting. I mean, 33s is very low for a team in 2024. So the fact that they were still trying, it wasn't like they were just coming down, jacking up threes. Now, several of those were products of just not playing with a certain level of urgency and energy offensively. So several of those threes were like end of shot clock situations where a guy, like I remember one in the 4th quarter where Austin just had to kind of chuck one up just because the shot clock was running down and the Lakers just hadn't really ran anything and hadn't gotten into any good actions. You're going to have an off night every now and then, and no team is perfect. Like the Celtics, the Nuggets, like go down the list of the best teams in the league. They all have their occasional off night and stinker performance offensively. So I think this was more of that from the Lakers. The turnovers were a bit concerning in terms of just uncharacteristic stuff, but some of that is also fatigue, right? And when you're tired, you are going to make poor decisions or not just be as sharp and not be as crisp from an execution perspective. So I think a lot of what this just came down to, LA was playing their 3rd game in 4 nights. They didn't really have the legs. They didn't really have the energy. And you could kind of tell from like late in the 1st quarter on, Indiana just had more juice than them, and they basically ran them off the floor. I think they could have played with more urgency and effort, but this was just one of those nights. They haven't had one of these types of games in a while. I really think the last game that we saw like this was probably the Sacramento game, and that was several weeks ago at this point. I want to say a little over 2 weeks ago. It's hard to hold it. Now, you hold it against them because every game matters right now. And to be clear, I also want to give Indiana credit. I thought they played a really good game defensively. This is a solid team, a really good home team. When I projected this trip last week, I did say like the Indiana-Milwaukee games were the 2 toughest games, were the 2 potentially losable games, and the Lakers won one of them, came back from down 19, won in double overtime, and they lost this one and were kind of blown out. It was a little bit closer than the final score, but like the Pacers did eventually blow them out midway through the 4th. I think a 2-1 start to the road trip is pretty good for the Lakers. Ideally, they win the next 3 against Brooklyn, Toronto, and Washington. Those are 3 sub-500 teams, 3 lottery teams that the Lakers should be able to handle easily. But if they lose one of those, 4-2 trip is still solid, not great in terms of trying to move up to number 8, but we'll see. Now, takeaway number 2 is there was one area of this game from an offensive perspective that I am a bit concerned with, and it's the free throw shooting. And not the free throw shooting in terms of percentage. The Lakers did shoot 83.3%. They made 15 of 18, but it's that 18 number that I'm a little concerned with because that was tied for the 11th fewest free throws the Lakers have made this season. And when they shoot under 20 free throws this year, they're just 9-11. And as we know, this is a group that is among the league leaders in free throws. LeBron James and Darvin Ham have both said at various points this season that the Lakers seek out free throws. They know it is often part of their winning formula, and that when they don't get calls or they don't get to the free throw line, it can be a factor for them. Like in a recent post-game interview, LeBron mentioned the Lakers are not a high volume 3-point shooting team. So part of the way they make up for that is by getting to the free throw line. But when you have a night like tonight, which to me almost had a playoff esque atmosphere at various points in terms of the way it was being officiated, like they were allowing a lot of contact. The Lakers ended up they had 14 fouls. The Pacers had 14 fouls. LA only attempted 18 free throws, and the Pacers only attempted 14. And quickly looking at Basketball Reference here, coming off of the last couple games against the Bucks, the Lakers attempted 32 free throws. Against the Grizzlies, they were at 35. Against the Pacers, a few games ago, they were at 43. Against the Sixers, the game before that, they were at 33. So we're talking about a 50% reduction in terms of attempts, and even more so in comparison to the last game against the Pacers. So my one concern that I will take from tonight, and it is hard to separate some of the stuff with the energy and the effort and it being 3 games in 4 nights and just some of the things I talked about in terms of the Lakers just having an overall off night. But I think if I'm looking at a way that the Lakers could lose in the play-in tournament or lose in the first round, Denver matchup aside, it's them not getting as many calls and them not being able to adjust as well on the fly. And I mentioned this in the last episode. Like, I think one way they can adjust is by taking more threes, because they have been a good 3-point shooting team this season. They've been top 10 in terms of percentage. Obviously, tonight we'll drop that a little bit. And if you have a night like tonight where you're just not making anything, you're shooting under 17% on threes, like, okay, maybe there's a limit there. Like, I just felt like there were possessions tonight where guys were trying to draw fouls and just kind of throwing themselves, lunging themselves at the rim into defenders. And sometimes that works. Like, more often than not, the Lakers get a lot of those calls. And that is part of the style of the way that they play. Like, they're physical and they mash you and they bash you. And they're really good at getting to the rim, and they're really good at protecting the rim and the paint and keeping you out of there and forcing you to take threes. So, like, the reason why the Lakers typically win the free throw battle is it's by design. And it's stylistic, right? But tonight just got me thinking, because I was trying to figure out, like, what is a lasting takeaway that I could have from this game, because again, I think it was just an off night overall. And to me, the one thing was, like, when the Lakers aren't getting calls, I think it can kind of compound, and then they're not getting back in transition. Like, sometimes a missed shot for them when they're trying to get a foul is almost like a turnover, because then guys drop their shoulders, they're talking to a ref, or maybe they fall and, like, they're not getting back on defense. And then that's a 5-on-4 opportunity or a 4-on-3 opportunity. And then a team like the Pacers can take advantage of that. When the Lakers look back at the film of this game, they need to, and I don't want to say something drastic, like reevaluate their offensive approach, because their offensive approach has been working for several months now. And they've been the second best offense over the past couple months. I just think that they need a better plan B when, like, you can tell within the first quarter and a half of a game how a game is being called. And when the refs are allowing teams to play and the Lakers to, like, I think with a different refereeing crew, the Lakers get their typical 25, 30 free throws, but that just wasn't the case tonight. And I think that there needs to be a better plan B. This is kind of just a bigger picture thing, but I think the Lakers need to be able to read a game a little bit better. And at least, like, again, if you want to continue to attack the rim, live in the paint, live and love in the paint, as Darvin likes to say, that is fine. But the kind of some of the grifting stuff and some of the seeking out the fouls and the free throws, I think ultimately hurt them tonight. And they need to be able to read and react a little bit better on the fly. And takeaway number 3 is, I think it's time for Cam Reddish to have his role reduced in the rotation. I just think it's been 5 games. He has not looked like his pre-injury self, and the Lakers' margin for error right now is not even 0. It's less than 0. And with the way that Cam is playing offensively, he's 1 for 11 in his 5 games since returning. I misspoke earlier. I'd said 1 for 13. I was wrong on that. It was 1 for 11. And he's just been missing open threes, passing up open threes, trying to pump and go or attack from the weak side. And every foray to the rim is an adventure. and it often ends poorly for Cam and the Lakers, missing layups. Like today, it was 2 shots where he got an offensive rebound, missed the putback, and then got it again, missed the second putback. Did have 4 rebounds, did have, I think, a couple blocks. Yeah, he had a couple blocks, 3 offensive rebounds, so 2 of those were on that one possession. But he's just not looked like himself. He's had some good moments defensively, but he hasn't been impacting the game defensively the way that he was pre-injury. And I think there's several ways that the Lakers can take him out of the rotation. That could just be playing more Spencer Dinwiddie, could be playing more Taurean Prince. Obviously, if Gabe Vincent makes his season return on Sunday against the Brooklyn Nets, you just give him Cam's minutes. I also think, like, in the meantime, if Gabe, for whatever reason, doesn't return on Sunday, he has a setback, or the Lakers just are being more conservative, then I think Max should be playing over Cam. Like, I just really don't see the argument against it at this point. Like, I don't think Cam's defense at this current level has been much better, if better at all, than Max's. And offensively, Max has hit threes in recent games. Like he still will make the sophomore mistakes, and he's still such a young player at just 21 that, like, he's gonna, he go through periods where he's a bit more timid, a bit more indecisive, overthinking things. And I get that. But just from a fundamental perspective, Max makes fewer mistakes than Cam. And Cam was especially destructive in the Memphis game. He was minus 17 in like 10 minutes. And he's had some of these stretches here recently where he just had, like, the Lakers have lost those minutes. And part of it too is just the Cam Taurean combo has not been good this season. The Lakers are minus 30 in the 505 minutes that those two have played together. So they have been playing together in a lot of second unit groups, smaller groups with Taurean at the 4 or Cam at the 4, whoever you want to say is technically the 4. The Lakers have been trying to stagger it a little bit more with LeBron in there or Rui, or we've seen some double big lineups with Jackson and AD. But I think that combination is particularly bad in terms of Taurean and Cam. I think that's one that the Lakers should remove from the rotation. And if Taurean's the 7th or 8th man and he's locked in the rotation, then I think that needs to come at Cam's expense and not continue to play those two guys together. But this is a smaller thing. It's really a minor thing in the rotation. Like, we're talking about probably the 9th man right now. But again, every possession, every second, every minute counts for the Lakers the rest of the way, more than the average team, just because of the position that they're in at number 9, with Golden State and Houston right behind them, with Phoenix potentially catchable, and with them not even guaranteed a playoff spot. Like, there's all these factors that the Lakers have to navigate and conquer. And playing a guy who has been a minus since returning, like, they gave him a shot. He's played 5 games now. He has not been good. He's had some good defensive moments, but the Lakers can't afford to play a one-way player right now, especially when his defense, it's not like it's been otherworldly. He's not been locking down guys and changing games in dramatic ways. And the Lakers have no margin for error. So whether it's Gabe coming back and just taking all his minutes, or Max stepping into the rotation, or the rotation just shortening and the Lakers going with 8 guys, I think at this point Cam needs to be benched. And I don't think that's going to happen. Like, maybe, I think the one way is Gabe coming back and just taking his minutes. But aside from that, if Gabe misses the next game, or Gabe has another setback and eventually has to miss more time, like, I think Cam's probably still in the rotation. He's just, for whatever reason, earned the trust of the coaching staff. But I think his minutes have been harmful lately, and the Lakers need to make that adjustment. That'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, for those on YouTube, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification button, liking and commenting. And those on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, please consider following, downloading, and leaving a 5-star review. I'll be back Sunday night with another post-game reaction after the Lakers game against the Nets. I will talk to you then.